Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Laurie, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Laurie, and I am so happy that you're here. If you're new to our show, welcome. Whatever way you found us, we are so thrilled that you're here. Make sure to click that follow button wherever you're listening so that you don't miss any other episodes. We have a huge, robust back catalog for people that have recently found us, so you can absolutely choose your own adventure. We're here to bring you actionable advice from people who are in the trenches. And today's guest is definitely somebody that you're going to want to lean into. So joining me is Tiffany Sauder. Now, Tiffany is a million things. She's a wife, she's a mom, she's a CEO of a company, she's a fellow podcaster, and she has built this entire business, and we're going to talk about it, of kind of have this life of where it's both and her core demographic are two household incomes, and how do you juggle all of the things? And I think even if you are listening and you're like, I'm in a season where I'm a stay-at-home parent, or I maybe don't have kids yet, but I'm thinking about it, there's going to be relevant, actionable things and takeaways for you, because we've all been through evolutions in our lives. And we were just talking off camera about being a parent in your 20s versus a parent in your 40s. And just, again, how do you juggle all of the things? And as we enter back into this kind of fall season where we're in, which is sort of like the New Year's of organizing, in that September time when kids are going back to school, we're kind of coming off of that. We're starting to put our foot on the gas again, where we took it off for a little bit during the summer. I thought it'd be a great time to have Tiffany come on, share her story, a little bit of insight, and help us just feel inspired to get back into the everyday routine for this last stretch of the year. So without further ado, let me welcome Tiffany to the show.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm looking forward to this. Your energy is so contagious. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you. I don't know. It's a lot. I don't mean to be a lot, but I get very excited about this stuff. And I love talking to other people who are passionate about what they do and are people that are walking the walk, not just talking about it, but they're actually like living proof of what they're out there kind of preaching to the world. So tell our listeners, I gave a very, 10,000 foot view of like who you are and what you do, but just, can you kind of connect the dots a little bit for them?
Yeah, for sure. I also feel like you have like this sort of like sexy, raspy voice that is also very fun. So not only it's like, it's like interesting and textured. I'm like, it's kind of weird, but
I want to keep you around all day. You're like so good for my ego.
Love it. Okay. So who am I? So I live in the Midwest. I'm a small town. I grew up in a really small town. My mom stayed home with us. This is relevant. My grandmas were stay-at-home moms. And that was just like what I grew up in small towns. If women were working, it was most likely because they had to financially for the household. It was not a career oriented kind of thing. It was like you worked a switchboard, you worked at the school, like you were in the cafeteria. Those kinds of things were what working women look like. So really, like, sincerely, the idea of like a working woman with a career, I like saw on TV, on sitcoms, and that was like it. It was not really actually in my life. But I was always drawn to the energy of like when we would travel as a family, or like I grew up just outside of Chicago. And it's like we would go to the city and we would see these women who were like dressed in this fancy stuff, and they would have like a big bag, and they would be like walking with so much intention. I just remember as a little girl being like, oh, like I love how that feels. And that connects to my like soul. So, I go about my life and I kind of get different inklings from the outside world that like my brain is good at business. I really do like it. I love people. I would say a natural leader as a kid, and I've refined some of those skills here now as an adult. And so I found myself graduating from college with a finance degree, getting a job at Lilly. It's a great big corporation. My dad was an entrepreneur as I was growing up. And I was like, I thought it would be so sexy to work at a big company and have a business card with my name on it and like go to this big parking garage and, like you can get your laundry done there. Like it was just, I thought that was going to be so cool, but I realized I actually felt so small and so insignificant in that environment. So that's how I leapt into entrepreneurship. And at 25, bought a tiny little ad agency and spent the next 17 years growing that business, building a team. We're one of the biggest in the state of in Indianapolis, and helping brands like Airstream and Boston Whaler and great big brands all across the country. And along that, I married another firstborn. My husband was an Ivy League football player. So he is his own sort of ball of ambition and all the things that come from that. And so trying to fit our lives together in our marriage, and then over the course of the next 3 decades, we had one kid in our 20s, two in our 30s, and then we had a surprise at 40 in the middle of the pandemic. I started to be like, I like literally was born with a life of and, or with a heart of and. Like I want to do all the things. I want to be on boards. I want to speak. I want to have a podcast. I want to build a business. I want to impact people's lives. I want to be a mom to a huge family. Like, how do I do all these things? And for a long time, my toolbox was like, it was like filled with just like brute force and ambition.
Yeah.
And trying to do it all instead of being really strategic with my time. And so as the story goes, 2018-ish, lots of things get really hard. Our marriage gets pushed to the edge. My business is struggling. I kind of lose a sense of myself in all of the activity. I lost the core of what the life I was trying to build. And so in my work now and helping others build a life of and, it is certainly inspiring them because I wanted to see women who were ahead of me and who had actually done it. But it's more to equip you with the practical tools, not just goal setting tools, but like literally practically, like Laurie, you teach people not just that an organized environment is a more peaceful place to live, but like, how do you do it? How do you get the closet clean? Is how do you set your family up? And the way that I set my business up to scale, how do I set our family environment up to scale so that we have the systems and processes in place so that we can not just live a life of achievement, but also live a life that has a lot of connection and intention in it. So I don't know. That's a 3.5-minute overview.
I like it. And I was intentionally like not interrupting, which is, because I have so many things that you said that kind of like struck a chord with me. And I want to kind of just go back on and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I'd like to believe that I'm speaking for our listeners as well. When I say, I think there's so many of us, we have a picture in our mind of like what we want our life to be like, whatever that is. And we're often so busy kind of chasing and going after what that is that we kind of get stuck in the weeds, right? And so in your effort to build your career, build your family and all this, you're so like, what's the next step? But you forget the intentionality, and then we lose that enjoyment, and then that overwhelm happens and everything gets muddied. I don't know. And at least that's how I feel. And that and so then I think people become disillusioned, and then they start going down, all this negative self-talk. And so then it can have that other reverse spiral effect. So I love that you've kind of gone through this evolution, and now you're working with other people to kind of help find their voice. Because I think we lose sight of our voice is really, I think, what happens along the way.
Well, I think that clear is kind. Let me have that be a backdrop to what I'm about ready to say.
Yeah.
Because I really mean this in a way that's like very generous. But when we are in a place of being overwhelmed and feeling guilty and feeling behind and our lives are chaotic, the sooner we can admit that that is our fault, that that is of our making,
Mm-hmm.
The sooner we can own a new set of the process of building a new set of tools so that that is not the outcome in our life. I had to admit to myself that the reason I did not know how to do all the things I had said yes to inside of the complexity of the family that we were building was because I didn't have the toolbox to do it. Now, that meant I needed some guidelines and some things to say no to. I needed to outsource something, but I had to admit that this was of my own making.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not my husband's job for not helping me enough. It was not my company's job for giving me creating a really big job for me really, really young. It was not my kids' fault for being born. It was not my parents' fault for living an hour away. It was not anybody's fault. I had to own that that was the only thing I actually had the toolbox to create. In the same way that when I was building my business and we had seasons where we didn't have enough sales, I could blame the economy, I could blame my salespeople, I could blame all kinds of external factors, or I could admit to myself, I don't know how to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner I admit that to myself, that that is a vulnerable admission of my starting point, then I can begin to say, well, I should probably learn how to sell. How do I go through the process of building my toolbox as a professional of knowing how to sell so that my business does not get to a place again where it doesn't have revenue? Like that feels like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But when we talk about it in our own lives, my business did not have revenue because I didn't know how to sell. Your life is chaotic and disconnected because that is the only thing that you have the toolbox to create, and it can change.
I love that. And again, that goes back to the and. And I think that's a hard look in the mirror for a lot of people, right? That's a hard admission because once you know something in my world, then you have a responsibility to do better, right? If you're victim blaming or you know what I mean, you're casting, like you said, and I see it in my world, right? Like you're saying,
Totally.
I can't be organized because my husband doesn't help out, my kids don't do this. At some point, and those things also may be true to some extent, but are you protecting your boundaries? Are you leading by example? Do you have the tools in your toolkit to know how to articulate what a clean room to your child looks like so that when you tell them to go clean the room, they know exactly what that means and the steps to take to do it? And so a lot of times those it is a both and but once you admit I have ownership in this, it's both powerful, but it's also scary because now you're like,
Totally.
oh, it's on me.
I think there is definitely, my podcast is called Scared Confident, because there is this gateway of fear that you have to, this sort of tunnel of fear. It gets shorter for me as I get more confident in my ability to solve. But like there's this tunnel of fear that we have to go through when we are going to walk into anything that's unknown. Our
Mm-hmm.
adult selves go into this protectionist of like, I like to be where I'm competent, where I'm loved, where I'm known, where I'm successful, where I know what the scoreboard looks like. Like that's where we naturally want to stay. And I think that muscle of growth gets very atrophied as adults if we don't keep testing it and trying it. And um, I appreciated when you in my intro where you said, like, I'm still in the game. It is so important for me to not just start reporting from the sidelines of my past successes. Like, oh brother. Like I'm still in the game of building my life of building our family, of building my career impact. Um, and so when we are in this growth muscle, when we're in the season of like, okay, the first step in growth is a vulnerable admission of what sucks. And once I can begin to agree on that, then I have to start beginning disconnecting from the safety of my known world. And I have to begin and just like knowing that even of like, I'm going to feel fear and how I'm going to make that go away for me is often beginning to create a clear understanding of what I want my future to look like because your brain is catastrophizing. It's hanging on to like the worst thing that could possibly happen, which probably has the lowest probability of actually
Mm-hmm.
taking place. And again, it's like we can't stop that reflex often, but just knowing it and getting on top of it. My daughter just went to a new gym. She plays volleyball. We're learning the world of volleyball. She's in her early teens. We're learning this whole thing. But when you walk into a new gym, every girl who's in that gym is like, if you're good, you're going to take one of my friends' spots because there's only so many girls that can be on the team. And so she left and she was like, I hate these girls are so mean. Like, I hate this gym. I'm never coming back. I was like, well, you're pissed that you felt like an outsider. So I get that feeling, but it's fear that is telling you to not like those girls. They did nothing wrong. They did exactly what you would have done. It's fear that is bringing that up for you. And the more you can know that, I say to my daughter, that is a muscle you have to develop. It's just it doesn't look quite so petulant as an adult, like we have better words to say
Yeah.
that make kind of that fear process feel like, well, yeah, that makes sense that you're not going to do that. We use things like my spouse would never help or whatever it looks like. So, anyways.
No, I think it's so good. And I also think, again, and I want to loop it back into some specific kind of like, we're this routines, because I think for so many people, and you specialize in working with people who happen to be two career family people. But again, this is relevant regardless. As family units are moving into their own busy seasons, distraction is so prevalent, and it's so easy to find something else to do, kind of pass the hot potato around. But I know for me, one of the easiest yet hardest to practice is establishing a routine. And I always tell people you have them by default or by design. They're either, your morning routine is crazy because you don't have a set thing that works for you. So your routine is we're rushing in the morning, where, somebody's notoriously forgetting something. I might be yelling, somebody could be crying, whatever. Or your routine hopefully has a little bit more flow to it. And so what I want to do today is really have you talk to the mom out there who is saying, I need a routine for myself. I need help establishing routines in our family. Where do I even begin?
Yeah. So let's talk about two things. One is uh, setting priorities as a family, and the other is just very practical in your space. So we're recording this right now, Laurie, as we're getting ready to go into the school season. So literally this weekend, we don't have a bunch of stuff going on, and we're going to go out for dinner as a family. And 3 or 4 days before we go out, I've told my kids, hey, this weekend we're going to talk. We're going to share our priorities for the coming season. So if your kids are in school, there's sort of like 3 chunks to seasons. There's first semester, which is kind of like, early fall to Christmas season. And then there's the second semester of the school year, and then there's summer. So every time there's kind of this major change, we sit down as a family and we all share our priorities. My husband and I share our priorities with the girls, and the girls share theirs with ours. Even my little girls, my youngest, my youngest will be 4 today, and my third one will be 9. She's almost 9. Even when they're little, even little things like I want to see my cousin, I want to go to this indoor park that I love. I like they don't have to be obviously these big goal things, but for them to feel like a specific member of the family, and that we are going to do things to make sure that those things happen for you, begins for them to feel like my voice is heard by the whole family. I know then exactly what it is that they're looking forward to. And if I'm like, hey, we've got a weekend coming up. Quincy wanted to go to the zoo. She's never been before. When you guys were, our older kids were little, they'd been 100 times by then. Like, how do I meet them in their stages? And so we'll talk about our priorities as a family. And that then helps me as the CEO of our household allocate resources, time and money to how are all those things going to get done. And we may find there needs to be some shared responsibility or compromise. For example, when my husband is gone, I really love to work out in the morning. When we're in the school season, one of my girls has to get on the bus pretty early. And so it's hard for me to get to the gym, work out, and come back and get her up for school in time to get her on the bus. And so my big girls so I should give your listeners some context. We have 4 girls, 15, 13, 9, and 4. So we got the bigs.
I know everyone. I'm just like, oh my goodness, it's a lot. Like,
it's a riot. We're learning how to drive. We still wear pull-ups to bed. Like it's just it's a hilarious thing. So my bigs, I'll say, hey, can you support my goal? I joke with them, I want to live to be 102. My goal to be healthy for you guys. Can you help my priority be healthy by helping me by waking your sister up on days when your dad is traveling so that I can go to the gym? And again, it's like instead of me being like, you gotta help me, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, I want to be healthy for our family. That is part of me being my best for you guys. Hey, girls, will you help me with this? And so when you're thinking about just like simple routines, just the exercise of publishing your priorities to one another as a family
I
is
love that.
such a powerful tool to make you a team.
Mm.
Your kids is going, you're driving your kids to practice is not happening in the face of your priorities. Like you can help each other.
You're also modeling behavior. So there's two things specifically that jumped out at me. And we've talked a lot about it. It's funny because we do our tip of the week on Mondays. And I recently dropped an episode all about making time to work out. And I know, and I've told the story before. So for our longtime listeners, this may be a repeat, but I martyred my way through, oh, I don't need to work out, putting myself on the back burner for why, for what? Like if I said nowadays, I would do things so much different. And I think you saying, no, this is important to me mentally, physically, and I'm a better person. I'm a better mom. I'm a better wife when I do this. Um, and to unapologetically do it and figure out a way that you could make it work, I think is not just great for you, but it's modeling this behavior for your girls to let them know that they don't have to just sacrifice all the things for their family. Like again, it's both. It's not, you're not choosing one or the other. It's how do we incorporate this as a team? And I absolutely just love that.
Totally. That's exactly the idea. Because a lot of times in the evenings, I'm driving my big girls every which way to all their practices. And so instead of me being like, because I get annoyed with them, and it's not their fault that I need to drive them. But when I don't have a couple of mornings to myself where I feel like a customer of my own time and energy and attention, then I look for all of them to like be that for me. Like I'm so tired around you. And I like turn into this, like, I use the language grumpy servant.
Mm-hmm.
When all I'm doing is serving my career and my family, I lose sense of myself and I become this caricature that is this grumpy servant. And that is not the spirit of who I am. But it becomes who I am when I don't hang on to that.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So I'm thinking of the family that is just like doesn't even know where to begin. So I love the fact of sitting down and having that conversation with everyone in the family about what your priorities are. How do you take this step from figuring out your priorities to then making that into establishing where are routines? Like, what is that, and I'm talking your practical routines, right? So it could be around, it doesn't have to be specific to morning routine. It could be a laundry routine. It could be our bedtime routine, but just, we have these pockets that seem to become bottlenecks and triggers for a lot of families. And so trying to get on track is hard. And I'm just,
it is.
yeah.
And to totally implement all your priorities, that's what I have a thing called the Life of And Academy, and that would help a family do the whole thing. But I have a couple of kind of quick places to start.
Yeah.
I am a huge advocate. Someday I will introduce myself as my name is Tiffany Sauder and I don't do my laundry. And you shouldn't either. I am if your household income is more than $150,000, and this is, not every household income, but if it is, you can afford to outsource your laundry.
Okay,
And
we need to talk about this because laundry is a big hot button around here at This Organized Life. So
I'm telling you, outsource your laundry. Sorry.
okay, so all right, we're going to dig into this for a second. So outsource it out because my husband would be we call him laundry loving Josh because he's obsessed with laundry. So he doesn't do the kids' laundry, but he does our laundry. And it's like, if I do the laundry, he's like, why are you doing the laundry? Like
Well, if we all
good with
have
the
a
chip.
laundry loving Josh in our household, then I would say, then find a laundry loving Josh. But we have no laundry loving Joshes in our household. So we outsource our laundry. So I have a laundry guide. I will send it to you, but let me give you a couple of tips.
Yeah, please do.
There is in the US, there's a nationwide service called Poplin. POPLIN.
Okay.
And I'll even include a code where people can get a free load. For $1 a pound, if you think about a kitchen trash bag, that white kitchen trash bag that you bought 10,000 times from Costco,
Mm-hmm.
one of those filled to the brim is like about 15 pounds.
Okay.
So I can get all my family's laundry done for less than $40 a week. It comes back washed, folded. My laundry pro puts like bows around, like little like bows around them within 24 hours. They pick it up in trash bags from whichever entry into your house you like. I throw it on a trash can. I put it outside my backyard. I go to my app and I say my laundry is ready to be picked up. You can pick your favorite laundry pros. So that like your Instacart driver, uh I have like the same three guys who deliver my Instacart all the time and they're amazing and I tip them well. It's like the same thing with this Poplin thing. They come pick it up. You can chat with them through the app, just like you can with like your delivery drivers and other different things, Amazon Prime and stuff. And in 24 hours, it gets delivered back. The customer service with Poplin is absolutely incredible. So if you have somebody who picks up your laundry and
And
my
and
assistant,
Poplin's getting free press right now, by the way.
yes,
I am learning about this as we speak.
they are going to sponsor my podcast by the end of this year. I'm telling you, I'm going to make that
Holy
happen.
moly. People are listening out there going, this could revolutionize my life. Now, I will say, as an organizer that's all about teaching people how to do these things, your kids do know how to do laundry, right? Like they know how to
Yeah,
do it. Okay. Cause
totally. They know how to do laundry, but just like I don't need to clean my house. My kids need to know how to do things. And I have a parenting coach on my podcast that has reprimanded me for not making my kids create their own processes to be able to do this. But for now, it's just what I've chosen to do. My kids don't do their own laundry. I send it out, but it is a privilege that they can lose. That is how I have set it up in our household, but they know how to do laundry. There's times when they need to do it or I'm like we're just going to do it ourselves. But we're hardly ever home.
but you
We are
said something,
hardly ever home.
but you said something in very quickly in passing, and I want to come back to it for a second because
Okay.
it's worth repeating. It is just because I know how to do something doesn't mean I have to do it. And that is a really big thing for a lot of people when it comes to looking at their time and time management. And especially, I mean, not, this is for anybody, but especially if you're in a two career household and you're juggling all the things, looking at what what am I in a position to delegate or outsource, whether that be laundry, whether that be your landscaping yard work, whether that be hiring a cleaning service to help you with supplemental stuff. It is not to mean that you are sitting there and your children shouldn't learn how to do things, but you are not only providing a service for other people, but you are showing that you cannot do all the things at once.
Totally. And honestly, you guys, I mean, technology has democratized so many things in our world. And for some reason, women still hang on to these menial tasks. You think about things like creating an invoice in our work, in our like off in our work world is a very menial task that used to be done by hand. Put in an envelope by hand and put in the mail that by hand somebody moved from place to place to place. Let's be very clear. Now we have technology that can do that. These administrative menial tasks that cooking for me is part of homemaking.
Mm-hmm.
I still do all of our cooking because I love it and that's part of making a home for me. So if doing laundry is part of homemaking for you, then by all means do your laundry. It doesn't have that
Yeah, you can't take that away
association
from
for me.
Josh. You cannot take laundry away from Josh. You can't
Laundry
be like,
Josh loves his laundry. I love that for you more than I love that for him.
thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
I love that for you. I did not find that version, but so that I don't feel bad about it. I feel like my ability to earn more money, and I have people say like, "Well, you can do that stuff because of where you are right now," or am I where I am right now because I made those choices? And I would say that is more the truth. If you look at the places in my life where my husband and I decided to outsource things, it was far before, quote, where we are now. We are here because we chose those things. We chose to spend our money not on stuff, not on a second house, not on a boat, not on a country club membership, not on a big designer handbag. We did not have those things. We had help instead. And the hours that that gave us to put into our careers that now earn us disproportionately at this season of our lives, the hours that that gave us as a family, the hours that that gave us in a season to repair our marriage and now to have an amazing marriage, those minutes you can't spend again. And we're doing them against tasks that are not paying us into the real buckets of life.
I love that. And I really think what you just said, whether you meant to or not, ties back into what our priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, again, people like, and if you're watching on YouTube, my hands up, like, this is not from a place of judgment at all for anybody of how people choose to spend time, money, resources. I am saying, though, that you guys made an intentional decision that you were going to make certain choices, make certain sacrifices so that you could develop this life that was important to you. And so a lot of times when I talk to people who are struggling with feeling overwhelmed with clutter and they look at all of again, the choices that they've made, and I don't mean this in a negative way, their choices or their habits or their lack of routines are contribute to why they feel stuck and overwhelmed and anxious. And when they can start to say, okay, I recognize that, no shame, here we are, then they can start to implement those healthy changes. But I think it all comes down, like you said, to really the crux of it is, who do I want to be? Like,
Totally. And I was becoming somebody I was no longer proud of. And so it was like, I had to change. I had to start defining my priorities because in the absence of my own definition of them, other people were choosing them for me. And then you just start being reactive to other people's desires for your life. And then you end up in a real weird place.
So tell our listeners right now, if they want to learn more about the work that you're doing and all the things, where is the best place for them to connect up?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Scared Confident. And I'm sure we'll put links in show notes, Laurie. I can get those to you.
Yeah.
But that is really a place where 2 episodes drop a week, and I'm focused entirely on helping 2 career families not just be encouraged, but really practical tips for how do you do this. If you're really interested in diving in the deep end, I have a Life of And Academy. If you go to my website, TiffanySauder.com, SAUDER, TiffanySauder.com, then you can take a look at the Life of And Academy and, really begin to implement this stuff into our family. It has been life-changing for our family. It has been life-changing for where my energy is at with my kids and our family. It's about moving us all forward and towards something instead of like nagging and complaining and sort of feeling like, I'm just somehow like all this stuff I'm just existing in. And it feels very different today.
I love it. And I love chatting with people like yourself. And of course, we'll put links to all things Tiffany in the show notes. So wherever you are driving, walking the dog, whatever, just click on the link in the show notes when you're done and you can find all the things. But it's always such a positive reminder to look at real people that know, hey, listen, it's not easy. You have to change is hard. Being intentional is hard. You're going against the grain. We don't want it. Like, life is, there's so much that's coming at us, but to allow yourself the opportunity to say, you know what, I am going to prioritize my mental well-being, my physical well-being. I'm going to prioritize our family. And sometimes it starts with, like, I need to get help, right? We take this approach, and I see it with organizing, where they just assume that we should know how to do everything. Well, it's a skill. It's a muscle that needs to be developed. And I love that you are providing this platform for people to go out there and be a little vulnerable and say, I need help in this certain area.
Yep. Awesome, Laurie. And I just want to normalize getting help. I remember when I grew up in a small town, people don't have nannies and house managers and people who help them. And so I would hear these little whispers that like stuff I would go to. I was like, you don't do your laundry? Like, I never thought of that before. And then your next thought is that has to cost a gajillion dollars, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air style, you know? And I like literally like I see Carlton in my head and it's like, well, he probably didn't fold his laundry either.
So funny.
But that's not the case. And I think having the courage to really, if there's something you want to outsource, have the courage to go figure out how much would it cost. The average American household spends $2,200 a year on alcohol and $800 a year on coffee. So that's $3,000. I'm not saying your family budget is the average American household, but like
Mine's
those
more.
are
Mine's more than that. So
I'm like, that's a place where it's like, you know, where do you find the money? It's like, I don't know, your daily Starbucks. It could be that you moved a box wine. I don't know. But like if you really, really want to, you'll figure out a way to make it happen. So anyways.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And even if you can't afford to, there's so many, and then this is why I love podcasting so much, because even if you're not in a financial position, I know everyone's struggling right now, but there's so many free resources of information. There's no shortage of information when you can find people that you resonate with and listen. And that helps to inspire and motivate until you're at a point where you can start to take action. And so I think it's just such a gift for you to be able to kind of share your insight and wisdom. And thank you so much for doing that with our listeners. I always like to wrap up with a few questions for our guests. And because our show is all about honesty and authenticity, and you know, we all have our areas where we're struggling and where we're thriving. Right now in this season of back to school with your 4 kids, where do you feel that you are like the most organized and you're like really have it together? And where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess? We know it's not laundry because you got that. We got thanks to Poplin.
Yeah, I'm buttoned up on that. I would say where I feel like we're on top of things is I would probably say in like the physical space of our house. We have just
good.
great systems in place that get managed when the rugs get washed, when the sheets gets changed, when the laundry's done, when the windows get washed. Like I've literally systematized all of that down to like all of it. I have a quarterly handyman that comes and I have this list on my phone of like shit
like a punch list, like a punch list of all
literally
these
punch
things.
list quarterly. He comes and takes care of the punch list. You know, somebody the little doorstop fell off, the light bulb's out, just all the thousands of things that you see as a mom. So like I'm like on top of that.
I like that. I like the quarter because I have a handyman that
quarterly
comes and
just
does
say
stuff,
come
but
see me.
I love that.
It's raining, whatever, you know,
That's
somewhere
like
in
such
here.
a great tip. I'm going to use that for my tip of the week, and I'm going to give you major props for that.
So good. It's so
I
like
that.
James comes, put stuff together for me, whatever. So where I'm a hot mess, I would say I'm 44. I'm kind of understanding this like perimenopause thing, which is like getting real personal here. Um, and I feel really on top of my physical activity, but I think my diet, I'm fine. Like people who like, you know, my gut health and my adrenal glands. I was sort of like, that stuff makes me tired.
Yeah.
But I'm getting to the place where I'm feeling my body change. My stomach doesn't do quite as well with gluten. Like I feel like I need to take a beat and kind of understand how my body is changing. And I'm not totally sure where to start. I'm kind of a little overwhelmed. Um, there's a lot of information out there. So I think that's a place where I sort of feel like I'm not confidently solving yet.
Yeah.
And sort of like maybe spinning out a little bit. So that's the place that came to mind.
Well, you are not alone. You're unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, in good company. There's a lot of people, and I've got some good podcasts to listen to and some other good resources because I'm a few years ahead of you on the other side.
Yeah,
so
I'm like here for it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely, definitely.
So
Tiffany, I appreciate all that you do. Thank you so much for coming on our show. Can't wait. Tiffany and I have some things in the works, so I'm sure this is not the last you'll be seeing and hearing of her. And again, check out her podcast, Scare Confident. And if you have a question for us, we have our Ask an Expert series, which we launched a few months ago. Love it. It's a way to incorporate you guys into the conversation. You can write in, there's a Google form. If you want to remain anonymous, we can answer your question on the air anonymously, change names. Or if you want to come on the show and ask your question directly, we can do that too. So there's a link in our show notes. Please, we'd love to hear from you guys. Any question you have about organizing, about the Enneagram, starting a business, you name it, would love to hear from you. So definitely check all of our things out. And until next week, I'm Laurie Palau.